My GF texted, "I'm done pretending. I am moving in with Rich Dave next week." I replied, "Best of luck." When Dave's ex-wife called to warn me he was still married and broke, her dream move became a nightmare eviction notice. Ashley and I had been building what I thought was a solid relationship for 3 years, the kind where you know each other's schedules and start planning holidays 6 months in advance. I'm Tom, 29, work in IT support for a mid-sized company, make decent money but nothing flashy, the kind of guy who drives a reliable Honda and actually reads the terms and conditions before clicking accept. Ashley always said she appreciated my stability, how I remembered her coffee order and never forgot important dates, though lately I'd noticed her scrolling through Instagram with this wistful expression whenever she saw posts of expensive vacations or designer handbags. The breakup text arrived on a Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. while I was debugging a server issue, and honestly, my first thought wasn't heartbreak, it was relief that she'd finally stopped pretending. "Tom, I'm done pretending this is working," she wrote. "Dave offered me a real future. I'm moving in with him next week. We both know you can't give me what I actually want out of life. Thanks for the memories." I screenshot the message immediately, some instinct telling me I'd need proof later, then typed back, "Best of luck," and hit send before I could second-guess myself. She responded within minutes, clearly expecting more drama. "That's it? No fight? Dave owns 3 rental properties and wants to give me the life I deserve. He's taking me to Cabo next month and we're looking at condos downtown. You're really just going to let me walk away?" I stared at the message, remembering how she'd criticized my boring job, my practical car, my preference for cooking at home instead of eating out 4 nights a week. "You made your choice," I replied. "Hope it works out." What surprised me most was how calm I felt sitting there in my cubicle, watching my 3-year relationship end via text message. No tears, no panic, no desperate urge to call her and beg her to reconsider. Just this weird sense of clarity, like someone had finally turned on the lights in a room I'd been stumbling around in the dark. She kept texting about Dave's BMW, his successful business, how he actually understood what women need, but I just turned off my phone notifications and went back to work. That evening, I ordered pizza, watched Netflix without having to negotiate what show to pick, and realized I hadn't felt this relaxed in months. The apartment was quieter without her constant complaints about money, my career trajectory, or how her friend Jenna's boyfriend had just bought her a $3,000 purse. For the first time in months, I wasn't walking on eggshells or feeling like I needed to apologize for being exactly who I'd always been. The call came 3 days later from a number I didn't recognize, and when I answered, a woman's voice asked, "Is this Tom? Ashley's ex-boyfriend?" I almost hung up, figuring it was one of Ashley's friends calling to guilt-trip me about the breakup, but something in her tone made me pause. "Yeah, this is Tom. Who's asking?" "My name is Carol," she said, and her voice had this exhausted quality, like someone who'd been dealing with a crisis for way too long. "I'm Dave's wife." The words hit me like cold water. Wife. Not ex-wife, not estranged spouse, current wife. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed, sitting down hard on my couch. "Dave Miller, the guy your girlfriend just moved in with? He's still very much married to me. Has been for 8 years. Carol's voice was steady but bitter. "I found your number in his phone along with a lot of other things that painted a pretty clear picture of what's been happening." She explained how she'd been tracking Dave's lies for months, watching their joint bank accounts drain while mysterious charges appeared on credit cards she didn't even know existed. The rental properties he brags about? Foreclosed on 6 months ago. The BMW? Repossessed last week, though he's been hiding that from everyone. The successful business? He got fired from his sales job in January and has been living off credit cards ever since. I felt this weird mix of vindication and genuine concern for Ashley. "So he's completely broke?" "Worse than broke," Carol said with a bitter laugh. "He's drowning in debt and apparently thinks the solution is finding women to fund his fantasy lifestyle. Your Ashley isn't the first girl he's pulled this con on, just the most recent." She paused, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. "Look, I know this is weird calling you like this, but I thought someone should know what she's walking into. Dave's been telling her he owns the house she moved into, but I've got the eviction notice right here. 3 months behind on rent." The irony wasn't lost on me. Ashley had left me for financial security and had instead found someone whose financial situation made my steady paycheck look like winning the lottery. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because someone should know the truth," Carol replied simply. "And because when this whole thing crashes down, which it will very soon, she's going to need someone in her corner who actually cares about her well-being rather than her bank account." Carol's prediction came true faster than either of us expected. 2 days after our conversation, she called again, but this time her voice carried a grim satisfaction. "It's happening today," she said. "I'm driving over to that rental house with the eviction papers and bank statements. Dave's been telling Ashley he owns the place, right? Time for her to see some documentation." I found myself genuinely worried about Ashley despite everything. "Are you sure that's the best approach? Maybe give her a heads up first." "Tom, I've been dealing with Dave's lies for years. The only thing that works is cold, hard evidence. She needs to see exactly what kind of man she chose." 3 hours later, my phone exploded with calls from Ashley's number. I let them go to voicemail, but the desperation in her voice was impossible to ignore. "Tom, something's really wrong here. This woman showed up claiming to be Dave's wife with all these papers. Dave's freaking out and I don't understand what's happening. Please call me back." When I finally called, Ashley was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Tom, I'm at Dave's house and his wife is here with eviction notices and bank statements and I don't know what's real anymore." I could hear shouting in the background, Dave's voice getting increasingly frantic. "Where are you exactly?" I asked, already grabbing my keys because something in her voice told me this was about to get much worse. 1247 Oakwood Drive. It's this beautiful house with the circular driveway and the fountain, you know? Dave said he bought it last year as an investment property. The address sounded familiar from Carol's earlier call. When I arrived 20 minutes later, the scene was exactly as chaotic as Ashley's voice had suggested. Carol stood on the front porch holding a manila folder thick with documents while Dave paced frantically in the driveway, his carefully styled hair disheveled and his expensive-looking shirt wrinkled. Ashley sat on the front steps looking shell-shocked, mascara streaked down her cheeks. "The rental furniture company is coming tomorrow to repossess everything," Carol was saying calmly, like she was discussing the weather. "The BMW got towed from the mall parking lot yesterday. And this house? 3 months behind on rent with eviction proceedings starting Monday." Dave turned to Ashley with this desperate expression. "Baby, she's lying. These papers are fake. She's just jealous because I left her for someone younger and more beautiful." That's when the landlord pulled up in a white pickup truck, parking behind my Honda. He was a stocky guy in work clothes who clearly had zero patience for drama. "Dave Miller? I've been trying to reach you for weeks. You owe me $8,400 in back rent and late fees. Pay up today or you're out tomorrow." Dave's face went white as the landlord continued. "And stop telling people you own this place. You're a renter, 3 months behind, and I've got 6 other applications for this property." The elaborate fantasy crumbled in real time as Ashley looked from Dave to Carol to the landlord, finally understanding that everything he'd promised her was built on maxed-out credit cards and outright lies. The first call came at 6:30 a.m. exactly 1 week after the eviction, Dave's number flashing on my screen with the persistence of a debt collector. I let it go to voicemail, then another, then another. By the 4th message, his desperation was palpable. "Tom, man, I know we got off on the wrong foot, but I'm in a temporary cash flow situation here. I've got assets tied up in investments that just need time to liquidate. If you could spot me maybe $5,000, I'll pay you back double within a month." I started recording all the calls, some IT guy instinct telling me I'd need evidence later. Dave's stories became increasingly elaborate with each message: frozen offshore accounts, a business deal in escrow, a lawsuit settlement that was definitely coming through next week. The man was a creative fiction writer, I'd give him that. But the real drama started when Ashley showed up at my apartment with her mother Linda in tow, both of them looking like they'd been strategizing for hours. Linda was a shorter, older version of Ashley with the same entitled expression and a voice that could cut glass. "Tom, we need to talk," Ashley announced, pushing past me into my living room like she still lived there. "You ruined everything and now you need to fix it." I blinked, genuinely confused. "I ruined what exactly?" "You knew Dave was married and you didn't warn me," Linda interjected, pointing one perfectly manicured finger at me. "You let my daughter walk into that disaster when you could have prevented it. That makes you partially responsible for her emotional damages." The logic was so twisted I almost laughed. "I found out Dave was married 3 days after you moved in with him. From his wife, who I'd never met before." "You should have called immediately," Ashley snapped. "Instead you let me make a fool of myself. Do you know how humiliating this has been? Living with a broke loser while thinking he was successful." "You mean like dating me?" I asked. "Except I was never broke, never lied about my income, and never had a secret wife." Linda stepped forward like a prosecutor making her closing argument. Ashley needs money for a new apartment deposit, moving expenses, and therapy to deal with the trauma you helped cause. We calculated $3,200 should cover her immediate needs. I stared at them both, wondering if they could hear themselves. You want me to pay Ashley for leaving me for another man who turned out to be a fraud? It's called taking responsibility, Linda said firmly. She wouldn't have been in this position if you'd been a better communicator. Ashley nodded vigorously. Plus, you know I don't have savings. I spent everything trying to keep up with Dave's lifestyle. The lifestyle you left me to chase? I pointed out. When Dave started calling again during their visit, I put him on speaker. Tom, thank God you answered. Listen, I've got this amazing opportunity in cryptocurrency, but I need seed money. Just $10,000 to get started and we'll both be millionaires by Christmas. Ashley's face went pale as she heard the same desperate con artist voice she'd been living with. Dave, she said, and I watched her realize I was recording everything. Ashley? Baby, is that you? Are you with Tom? Tell him about the investment opportunity. I hung up, looked at both women, and said calmly, the answer is no to everything. I won't be funding anyone's poor life choices anymore. Carol's lawyer called me 2 weeks later with news that made Dave's financial lies look like amateur hour. Mr. Thompson? This is Michael Rodriguez from Patterson and Associates. I represent Carol Miller in her divorce proceedings, and we need to discuss some serious criminal activity involving your ex-girlfriend. My stomach dropped. What kind of criminal activity? David Miller has been running credit card fraud and identity theft schemes across multiple states. We've uncovered evidence that he used Ashley's personal information to open at least 6 fraudulent accounts, forging documents that claimed my client authorized purchases totaling over $47,000. I sat down hard, processing what this meant for Ashley. So she's a victim too? That's complicated, Rodriguez said carefully. Some of the purchases were made jointly, and there are security camera recordings of both of them using the fraudulent cards. The district attorney's office is still determining whether she was an unwitting accomplice or a knowing participant. The scope of Dave's operation was staggering. Rodriguez explained how Dave had been using Ashley's identity alongside forged authorization letters claiming Carol had agreed to co-sign for major purchases. Cars, electronics, even a $12,000 watch that Ashley had posted on Instagram with the caption, "When your man knows how to treat you right." The police have been building a case for months, Rodriguez continued. They've connected him to similar schemes in Ohio and Florida. We're talking wire fraud, identity theft, credit card fraud. He's looking at 5 to 10 years minimum. What hit me hardest was learning how methodical Dave's manipulation had been. He specifically targeted women with good credit scores and steady employment histories. Ashley's clean financial record made her perfect for his schemes. The lawyer paused. He also had detailed information about your income and banking habits. Apparently he'd been planning to target you next if the relationship with Ashley had continued. That night, Ashley called crying hysterically. Tom, the FBI showed up at my work today. They're saying I might be charged with conspiracy to commit fraud. I didn't know anything about those credit cards. Dave told me his aunt co-signed for everything. I believed her. Ashley was selfish and materialistic, but she wasn't a criminal mastermind. Have you talked to a lawyer? I can't afford a lawyer. My mom's freaking out, saying this could ruin my entire future. The agents showed me purchase records with my signature, but I swear I never signed anything like that. Ashley, you need legal representation immediately. This isn't something you can handle alone. Will you help me find someone? Please? I know I treated you terribly, but you're the only person I know who understands complicated paperwork and financial stuff. The irony was brutal. She'd left me for someone who seemed more financially sophisticated, only to discover he was using that sophistication to commit federal crimes, potentially dragging her down with him. Things escalated quickly after the FBI visit became public knowledge. Within days, Dave and Ashley launched a GoFundMe campaign titled, "Help Young Love Survive Vindictive Ex-Wife's Lies," complete with a sob story about how Carol was weaponizing the legal system to destroy their happiness out of pure jealousy. The campaign description painted Dave as a successful entrepreneur being falsely accused by a bitter ex-wife who couldn't handle his success with a younger woman. They were asking for $25,000 to fight these baseless charges and start fresh. I screenshot the entire campaign before reporting it to the platform for fraud, watching their donation total hover at a pathetic $340 from people who clearly didn't know the real story. The harassment started small, anonymous emails calling me a jealous loser, who couldn't handle Ashley upgrading to a real man. Then I walked out to my truck one morning to find the windshield smashed and, snitch, keyed into the driver's side door. The repair estimate was $2,800, which I dutifully documented for the police report along with everything else. Dave's workplace confrontation was the moment I realized he'd completely lost touch with reality. I was leaving my office building when he appeared from behind a parked car, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His expensive clothes were wrinkled, his hair greasy, and his eyes had this manic quality that made me immediately look around for security cameras. "This is all your fault," he hissed, stepping too close into my personal space. "Ashley and I were happy until you started poisoning people against me. Now the FBI is harassing us because of your lies." I stayed calm, keeping my voice level. "Dave, I never contacted the FBI. Your own crimes brought this attention." "Crimes?" He laughed bitterly. "I was building something beautiful with Ashley. A real partnership. Then you had to stick your nose in where it doesn't belong. By telling her you were married? That was just basic honesty. You destroyed our future because you couldn't handle that she chose someone better than you," he said, his voice rising. "Now you're going to fix this. You're going to call the FBI and tell them you made everything up." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "I'm not going to do anything except ask you to leave me alone." That's when Dave made the mistake of grabbing my arm. "You'll do what I tell you, or things are going to get much worse for you." Two security guards emerged from the building right then, and Dave fled to his rental car, but not before shouting, "This isn't over." Meanwhile, Ashley's calls continued their predictable pattern, desperate pleas for help alternating with furious blame sessions. "If you just minded your own business, none of this would be happening," she sobbed during one late-night call. "Dave says the charges will get dropped if people stop cooperating with the investigation." But the most satisfying development was watching Dave's other victims emerge from the shadows, each with remarkably similar stories of financial manipulation and identity theft, turning his isolated con game into a federal case with multiple witnesses. The arrest happened on a Wednesday morning while I was reviewing quarterly reports, and Carol called me within an hour with barely contained satisfaction in her voice. "They got him," she said simply. FBI agents arrested Dave at his gym. Apparently he thought working out would help him maintain his image even while dodging federal charges. The charges were extensive: wire fraud, identity theft, credit card fraud, and conspiracy across 3 states, with prosecutors seeking 5 to 10 years in federal prison. They found evidence connecting him to at least 12 other victims, Carol continued. Women in Ohio, Florida, and Michigan who all fell for the same wealthy businessman routine. The domino effect was swift and merciless. Ashley moved back in with her parents within a week, and according to mutual friends, she was working retail at the mall for minimum wage while facing civil lawsuits from Dave's other victims seeking restitution. Her Instagram went from luxury lifestyle posts to radio silence, then eventually bitter quotes about fake people and learning who your real friends are. Linda stopped calling to demand money once she realized her daughter was facing potential bankruptcy from the civil suits. Meanwhile, Carol's investigation had helped federal prosecutors build an airtight case that enabled multiple victims to recover substantial portions of their losses through asset forfeiture and restitution orders. "I'm starting a support group," Carol told me during one of our occasional check-in calls. "Turns out there are a lot of women who've been through similar financial manipulation, and talking about it helps everyone heal faster." She paused. "You should be proud of yourself, Tom. A lot of men would have tried to rescue Ashley or gotten pulled into Dave's drama. You kept your boundaries and let the truth speak for itself." 6 months later, I got promoted to senior systems analyst with a 15% raise and started dating Rebecca, a project manager from the marketing department who actually communicated like a functional adult. When she suggested we split dinner costs on our 3rd date, I almost laughed with relief. "Is that weird?" she asked, misreading my expression. "Most guys seem to expect to pay for everything." "It's perfect," I told her honestly. "I dated someone who thought my wallet was community property. It's refreshing to be with someone who understands partnership." Rebecca laughed. "Oh, one of those. Yeah, I dated a guy who borrowed money for emergencies that always coincided with new video game releases. Some people think relationships are just another income stream." The last I heard about Ashley, she was still living with her parents and had started dating a guy who worked at the same retail store, someone closer to her actual league now that reality had permanently adjusted her expectations. Dave was serving his sentence at a federal facility in Ohio, and the support group Carol started had grown to over 30 members. As for me, I was finally with someone who valued honesty, communication, and actual partnership over financial transactions disguised as romance, and life had never felt more genuinely secure.